One of the most important missions of history is to constantly remind humanity of the monumental events and the people who shaped them. We must never forget the fates of the bloodiest tyrants, so we never repeat their crimes. We must draw inspiration from the lives of the greatest thinkers, and we must genuinely stand in awe of the commanders who seemed almost superhuman. Lately, we've been arguing among ourselves and finally arrived at a question that sounds simple but is insanely difficult to answer. Who was the single most influential person in all of recorded history? Who could, with a single stroke of a pen or a single command, raise empires from nothing, wipe entire kingdoms off the map, and decide the fate of tens or even hundreds of millions of people? History has known plenty of such figures, but right now we're going to try to find the absolute champion. We've done our best to stay as objective as possible, though 100% accuracy is impossible here. Too much is subjective. What we can promise for sure: drop your own candidates in the comments, we'll collect every single one, count the votes, and later release a massive ranking based entirely on your choices. Before we dive in, let's go over the rules one more time. There will be 2 winners, one for the greatest influence during their lifetime, one for the greatest influence after their death. This separation is absolutely necessary because influence comes in different forms. Some were treated like gods while still alive and could make the world tremble with a glance. Others seem perfectly ordinary in their day, and their true significance only became clear centuries or even millennia after they were gone. Right away, we're excluding scientists and inventors. Albert Einstein, Socrates, Pythagoras, their contribution to the fate of the planet is colossal. But it's a contribution of ideas, formulas, and discoveries. If Einstein had stepped onto a stage and ordered the world to stop World War II, nobody would have listened. Yet there were people for whom that would have been child's play. That's exactly who we're focusing on today. First, we threw out every politician from the last 70 to 100 years: Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Queen Elizabeth II, today's leaders of superpowers. Yes, they're powerful figures, but on the grand historical scale, their personal influence is limited. The modern world is too complicated, bureaucratic, interconnected, and bound by international law. Even presidents of superpowers have to answer to congresses, parliaments, media, public opinion, and economic realities. The United States hasn't been able to fully solve its own domestic problems in half a century, and most of its foreign wars since Vietnam have ended in defeat or highly questionable outcomes. So the absolute giant has to be found much deeper in the past. Was it Adolf Hitler? Without a doubt, the first truly serious contender of modern history. A man who in just 12 years went from a failed artist and nobody to an absolute dictator whose very word made all of Europe shake. The Anschluss of Austria in 1938, the Munich Agreement, the dismemberment of Czechoslovakia, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, all of it happened with almost no real resistance. Neville Chamberlain flew to appease him, Stalin signed treaties and called him friend. The world turned a blind eye to Kristallnacht and the concentration camps one order from him. And millions marched off to kill or be killed. Even German generals who perfectly understood the suicidal nature of Operation Barbarossa or the Battle of Stalingrad still obeyed. That was the peak of absolute personal power in the 20th century. Terrifying, but undeniable. But there is a man who achieved something very similar 150 years earlier, in an era without tanks, aircraft, railways, telegraph, or radio. Napoleon Bonaparte, a Corsican born into a minor noble family just 1 year after France bought the island from Genoa. At 26, he was already a general, at 30, first consul, at 35, emperor. He personally won more than 50 major battles, out of roughly 60 he fought in, crushed 5 European coalitions, forced Pope Pius VII to travel to Paris for the coronation, and wait in the hallway while Napoleon crowned himself. He created the Napoleonic Code, the world's first complete civil code, still the foundation of law in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Poland, Romania, most Latin American countries, parts of Japan, Turkey, Egypt, and even the state of Louisiana. He introduced the modern département and prefect system, still in use, the Concordat with the Vatican, the Bank of France, the metric system, now the global standard, house numbering in Paris, lycées and grandes écoles, the title of Marshal of France, the Legion of Honor. He sold Louisiana to the United States for $15 million, instantly doubling their territory, and used the money to finance his wars. After his fall in 1815, the entire Congress of Vienna was convened specifically to erase everything Napoleon created. And they failed. Most of his reforms are still alive in their 3rd century, and his military tactics are studied in academies around the world. Queen Victoria, George Washington, and other titans of the modern era can also be passed over. Their decrees did destroy and create nations, but behind everything stood a gigantic machine: armies, navies, economies, colonial administrations. We're looking for someone who, while alive, was practically a living god everywhere he went. So only 2 true finalists remain: Genghis Khan and Alexander the Great. Genghis Khan, real name Temujin. A man who rose from an orphaned outcast to ruler of the largest contiguous empire in human history. He created the world's first intercontinental postal system, the YAM, introduced the Uyghur script and mass literacy among the elite, established complete religious tolerance. Nestorian Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, and shamans prayed side by side in his camp. His great yasa was so strict yet fair that, according to contemporaries, a woman carrying a gold tray could walk alone from Korea to Hungary without being harmed. He personally crushed the Khwarezmian Empire, the Jin dynasty, began the conquest of the Song dynasty, and smashed the Russian principalities at the Battle of the Kalka River. Modern genetic studies show that roughly 16 million men alive today are his direct patrilineal descendants. Alexander the Great, in just 12 years, from age 20 to 32, marched undefeated over 20,000 kilometers, destroyed the greatest superpower of his age, the Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded more than 70 cities, 20 of them named Alexandria, arranged mass mixed marriages in Susa, 10,000 Macedonians married Persian women in a single day, and turned the Greek coin language into the international lingua franca from Gibraltar to India for 3 centuries. After his death, a third of Asia still spoke Greek 100 years later, and the Library of Alexandria and the museum remained the intellectual capital of the world for 700 years. By conquering Persia, he controlled roughly 50 to 60% of the entire population of the known world at that time. That's why the title of the most influential person during their lifetime goes, without any doubt, to Alexander the Great. He achieved all of this 1,500 years before Genghis Khan, without horse archers and without a ready-made steppe war machine, and he left behind not just fear, but an entire culture. In the after-death category, the winners are 2, Jesus Christ and the Prophet Muhammad. They founded the 2 largest religions on Earth, which together have more than 4.5 billion followers, and still shape the laws, morals, calendars, and daily lives of more than half the planet's population. Arguing which of them is more influential is simply pointless. And the overall absolute leader in all of human history, in our opinion, is Alexander the Great. If you have other candidates, write them in the comments. We'll collect every name, count the votes, and make a huge community ranking. See you in the next video, friends!